in the picture.
Yeah. And just mute your microphone, please. And when I introduce you, if you could turn it off or turn it back on, but if you can mute it for
Okay,
now.
thank you.
Thank you.
Are you ready, Rashad?
Unmute everything, please.
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay, I'm pressing play.
Passionate, outspoken, insightful. Ariva Martin is an award-winning civil rights attorney, best-selling author, legal commentator, and America's advocate. Live from Los Angeles, this is the Special Report.
Good morning and welcome to our viewers in the U.S. and around the world. To kick off this morning's broadcast, do me a favor. Please share the show with your online friends or start a viewing party. And remember to post a comment or question. Your voice matters and I want to hear from you. In less than 1 month, school kids across this country will return for the new school year. Some will return to physical classrooms while others will resume distance learning. Which schools will open and which will not is causing a raging debate amongst parents, educators, and even politicians. Amid the raging pandemic, rising cases nationwide, and an uncontrolled spread of COVID-19, many parents and teachers worry if their schools can actually implement safety protocols that will protect not only students, but also staff. While for many parents who have spent the last few months juggling their day job and simultaneously serving as teachers, reopening school doors is a necessity. But to complicate matters, Trump is pressuring local governments to open their schools, falsely claiming that he can unilaterally defund those that decline to do so, and he can actually punish those schools that don't open their school doors to 100% in classroom learning. Major school districts in LA and San Diego are ignoring Trump's demands and are sticking to online instruction only. While a neighboring district, Orange County, has announced not only will students return to the classrooms, but they will do so without any requirements for masks or social distancing. Detroit will offer parents a choice between in-person or online. If educators and officials can't agree on the best course of action, how are we parents to decide? And what about the safety of our kids? Is anybody really thinking about what's in their best interest? Let's discuss. My first guest is Becky Pringle. She is the Vice President and President-elect for the National Education Association, the nation's biggest union, representing 3 million educators and school support personnel in K through 12 and public colleges across the country. Good morning, Becky.
Good morning, Ariva. How are you today?
I am well. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, we had Lily Garcia on the show about a month ago, and it was one of our most watched shows because the issue of sending kids back to school has really captured the nation. And whether you are a parent or not, you know, what happens to millions of kids across the country is really the concern of just about anybody in the country. And we don't know. I'm a parent of 3 kids, and I sit here, I've done these shows, I've talked to the experts, and as I sit here, I'm still really torn. So Becky, help us figure out, what do we need to know about this big decision that parents have to make, in some cases in just 3 or 4 weeks?
So thank you for continuing this discussion, because it's complex. And we know that all of us, well, most of us, have our students' interests at heart. I've gotten a chance to talk with educators all over this country. And they want nothing more than to be back in front of their students. When they were ripped from them in the spring and asked to transfer their teaching and our students' learning to online like that, they were the first ones to step up and say, we need additional time, we need additional assistance, we need to figure out how we best ensure that our students' learning, all of them, continues. And by the way, and you know this, you've talked about this a lot, you know, this pandemic has, for some people, had this bright light shining on the inequities in our system, particularly for our Black and Brown students, our students with special needs. And here's the thing, we've known that forever. Educators have been standing in that gap forever. And as we think about reopening our schools, where are the politicians who have not stepped up in the past to fill those gaps of inequity? Where are they now? When we're talking about opening some schools within a week, we've been having this conversation for how long? Since our students went out. The House already passed the HEROES Act a month ago. The Senate still has not acted. How in the world do they expect parents to make good decisions or educators to be prepared without the support they need to ensure our students are safe, our educators are safe, our students' families and communities are safe? We need the Senate to act yesterday. And here we are, ready to start school.
Well, Becky, you asked a really good question. You asked the question, where are our politicians? Let's take a look at a clip to see where one of our politicians is.
Open. We want to get them open quickly, beautifully in the fall. And as you know, this is a disease. It's a horrible disease, but young people do extraordinarily well. And we hope that most schools are going to be open. We don't want people to make political statements or do it for political reasons. I think it's going to be good for them politically, so they keep the schools closed. No way. So we're very much going to put pressure on governors and everybody else to open the schools.
When you hear that politician, the president of the United States, Becky, say, we've got to get these schools open, what do you say in response to Trump?
So Donald Trump is not an expert in education. He's certainly not an infectious disease expert, but we have guidelines from the CDC. From his own administration, we have Dr. Fauci saying, go slowly, make sure you're following those guidelines. But yet we still are waiting for him to step up and say, Senate, members of the Senate, pass this HEROES Act so our schools and our students have what they need to open safely. He's hoping that something will happen. He is the president and should be setting an example, the tone at the top, that we care about our kids. And by the way, you know, since Lily was on your program, things have changed substantially. We have seen the infection rates going up. And the other thing, and we've heard some parents talk about this too. You know, early on, we thought that the COVID-19 would not impact our students as much. We are seeing more and more outbreaks amongst our young folks. And the other thing that our parents are talking about that they're very concerned about is that as this disease is running its full course, we're seeing that those folks who are infected with it are having long-term impact. And so our parents are very fearful. Axios just released a poll that you may have seen of our parents, and they are afraid. And do you know which parents are the most afraid? Our parents of color, with our Black parents being at 90% fearful about sending their students back to school. And why? You and I both know why. Because the Black community has been disparately impacted by COVID-19. More of those communities have been impacted because they are predisposed to getting the virus and dying from the virus. And so they're very afraid for their students, and rightly so. And they are not trusting politicians to, in this moment, step up and do what's right for our students.
You're so right, Becky, about those numbers in terms of how African Americans have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. But I think one of the things that really is bugging parents, whether you're a Black parent, Latina parent, or a white parent, doesn't matter. It's the mixed messaging. So you just quoted that poll that came out in Axiom. I want to play you a clip from the White House secretary, because you also mentioned what the experts are saying about reopening school. Let's take a look at what she said about the experts.
Guidelines or new pages of documents for CDC coming out this week. Is that still the plan? Are those going to come out this week? Is there any chance that this is being rethought at this time?
So those are CDC guidelines you're referencing. So I'll leave it to CDC as to when those guidelines come out. But we really would like to see schools open. As has been clear, we don't think our children should be locked up at home with devastating consequences when it's perfectly safe for them to go to school, as emphasized by many medical experts. So the president is very keen on seeing schools reopen. It's the only thing that's fair to America's children.
So, Becky, you hear the White House secretary talking about many medical experts and putting that out there for the world to hear, suggesting that many medical experts are pushing schools to reopen and saying that it's perfectly safe for kids to return. So, as a parent, we're sitting here, and I put myself in that category because I am a parent, and I'm a Black parent. I'm a parent of a special needs child. So I get to check all of those boxes. And, not everybody's going to be able to filter those messages. And when they hear the press secretary for the president say there are experts that say it's safe to reopen school, how are parents to know who are they to believe in this debate?
I don't believe we heard her say which experts these were. I didn't hear that in the clip. And we didn't hear that because there are no medical experts that we trust who are infectious disease experts who are saying that. They are not saying that the students can just go back to school and everything is safe. They left schools that were unsafe. They left schools that didn't have soap in the girls' bathroom, that the air quality was so low that those students shouldn't have been in those schools in the first place. So now they're going to go back to those unsafe environments? I don't think so. And let me say something else, Reba. The pediatricians actually talked about the fact that they believe that students should go back to school when it's safe. And folks like her and the president took that and they took it out of context. And they said that the pediatricians are saying the students should go back to school. That's the most safe place for them to be. They were so appalled by that what they were saying was taken out of context, that they joined with the NEA and other groups to issue another letter in guidance to the administration, politicians, parents, and schools, saying that's not what we said. We said that students should go back to school when and if it's safe. And I emphasize the if too, because we see these cases rising all over the country, and we've talked about that. And that's one of the things that CDC has said. Look at whether the cases are increasing. That also tells you when it will be safe. And then how we go back. We have to have our parents, our educators, the students themselves. When we talk about our students going to higher education, going back to school, to colleges and universities, they should be involved in these conversations too, so they know how to go back and keep themselves safe. They know that the testing is there available for them. They know that testing will be ongoing, that the tracing is done. All of the things that the CDC has told us we need, that's what we need to follow. And that's what our parents are asking for too. And even though they absolutely, they want their students back in school. Absolutely.
And I think there's agreement about that. We're going to be talking later to an expert on colleges, because you raise a good issue. It's not just the K through 12 students who are grappling with this. It's parents of college students. I'm going to check that box for me as well, because I'm also a parent of a college student who also has to make that hard decision. But I want to talk about the staff in these K through 12 schools, because we've talked a lot about keeping our kids safe. But one of the things we know about COVID-19 is that even though kids have probably a reduced chance of becoming infected and probably will recover faster than adults, that kids can be spreaders, and that schools are full of at school administrators and teachers and bus drivers and the lunchroom ladies and men. So schools have staff. I want you to see a recent post on Facebook that was written after Governor Newsom in California. We have these rising cases. We're part of the South and Southwest where cases are spiking, and he said basically, LA Unified said no school, San Diego said no school. Newsom came out and said that includes, if you're on this watch list of 32 counties in California, no private schools. Take a look at this post from someone on Facebook, a parent who railed against, teachers, basically saying, teachers, don't be snowflakes. You are essential workers. And if the Target worker or the grocery store worker can go into a store, how is it that teachers are saying they can't go into schools? I want you to think about that. And I want to bring in a teacher that's on the call. I want to bring in Angela Skillings, because Angela is a teacher who tried to go back into a classroom. And Angela is an Arizona teacher. She shared a classroom with 3 other teachers. All 3 of them contracted COVID, and sadly, one of those teachers actually died. One of her co-teachers, Kimberly Lopez Bird, died. Good morning, Angela.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good. How are you feeling? We know that you were infected with COVID yourself. How are you doing?
I'm finally think I'm coming to the end. Finally touching my rainbow is how I tell the kids. Today is 5 weeks since the day I was tested. And I think it's finally coming, down. The cough is the worst part in the end.
And we know you lost a co-teacher, a friend, Kimberly Lopez Bird. She was in that classroom with you, and unfortunately, she didn't survive. And when you see that Facebook post of parents responding to Governor Newsom, basically saying, teachers, if liquor store clerks can do it, if grocery store clerks can do it, you need to get your butts back into those classrooms. How does that make you feel?
I would do anything to be back in the classroom with my students. Every teacher wants to be with their students. Doing online is not the same. I miss the hugs. We miss, the high fives and all the fun times that you have with students. To a parent that says that, I've had a few of them that have contacted me and said the same thing. And to me, it's, live my experience. Yes, I understand the essential workers that have been through this and they have survived through this, but we don't see the high numbers. We really haven't seen the data of how many of employees are actually getting sick. The 3 of us in the classroom, we were very diligent. We temperature check, hand sanitize, mask, wipe everything down, washed our hands, social distanced in the classroom. We did everything we could possibly do to keep each other safe, yet it didn't happen. So how can we do that with children?
And I want to ask you, Becky, that's Angela's story was so shocking to me. You think about teachers, you know how they're already underpaid, the sacrifices that they have to make. And these 3 women went into a classroom in Arizona, as Angela just said, using all of the, following the CDC guidelines, in terms of keeping themselves safe, yet all 3 of them contracted COVID. And again, one of them sadly succumbing to it. How can any parent feel like, they can send their child back and not either get infected themselves or, spread the disease to a teacher or take it home and bring it home to grandma or grandpa? But if you're in one of these school districts like Orange County, California, where there is a vote to go back into the schools, what are you to do as a parent?
Yeah, so that's such a sad story. And Angela, I'm so glad that you're starting to feel better. Kimberly was one of our members, Ariva, and we were very saddened to hear about her passing, and she's not the only one. We have school bus drivers who stepped right up and said, what, we'll drive our school bus and we'll make a hotspot for those kids that don't have access to delivering meals, and we've lost far too many of them who did step up and rise to the occasion. And so for any human, honestly, Ariva, to say that and dismiss that human life is disturbing to me on so many levels. But we can't listen just to those voices. We as educators, you heard Angela say that, and she's saying that from the heart. And I have heard hundreds of our members say exactly, they want to be back with their students. But they not only are worried about their students, they're worried about themselves maybe spreading to their students. They're worried about their students taking it home to their families. They know that without the continuous support with the protective gear, the ability to space, the ability to come up with a plan. And I know you've heard this, but lots of ideas are going around, like hybrid models, and talking to parents about, well, we'll send them half a day or a couple of days a week, or and I heard one parent say, now, wait a minute, my students going on Monday and Tuesday, does COVID not, spread on those days? That was a parent saying that. So she's worried. And she said, I'm keeping my baby at home because I don't know, I'm not hearing anything about what's going to happen to keep her safe. And then as we think about those hybrid models, who's thinking about, okay, if we have some students in school now, who's teaching the students online? Are we hiring more people? We've lost almost a million educators have been laid off already because our states are suffering from this economic crisis. We're expecting at least 2 million more. So how is it we're going to do social distancing, provide for the social emotional needs of our students, have more nurses in schools that had no nurses before COVID? We are looking for our politicians to step up and stop making us have this false choice. Our parents, our educators, our students, it is a false choice. We can do this safely, but we have to have the resources and support. And at this point, Arita, we need the time to do it. We need the time.
I want to bring someone else into this conversation because she feels the same way that you do, that these schools aren't safe. Her name is Shanta Driver. She is the BAM, By Any Means Necessary chair, and she recently organized a protest in Detroit to prevent schools from opening. These protesters actually blocked school buses from leaving bus terminals. Welcome to the conversation, Shanta.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I just want to ask you, Shanta, what prompted you to lead this protest, and why stop the buses?
Because any of the places that have opened schools prematurely, let's start with Israel, where there is now a national scandal over the fact that Israeli schools were open before it was safe. And as a result of that, there are hundreds now, 1,200 in fact, new cases of COVID that can be attributed to the school opening, to the children going back. Everybody knows. Look at the statistics from Florida. 31% of the students test positive, of young people tested positive in Florida, compared to 11% of the total population. The young people can give the disease to anyone, to other young people, to their parents, to their grandparents, to their sisters, brothers, neighbors, when they go home. And if you can't open the schools without assuring that every single person that works in the schools, but also every community is safe, no, you just can't do it. We are not talking about playing Russian roulette with the American people. Detroit, where I am from, has already suffered a huge disproportionate number of deaths in the state of Michigan. And now to have a situation where our schools are being opened and we know they don't have enough masks. We know from school bus drivers that they weren't given masks or hand sanitizers or any kind of training in how to see children so that there could be social distancing. They received nothing. And it's a scandal to do this to me. It's like pronouncing a death sentence on the students.
I want to show some video from that protest that you actually organized, Shanta.
School Bus Depot this morning made it clear they feel it's just too early to open schools and they fear COVID-19 could surge.
Detroit children cannot be used as guinea pigs to find out what do you happen when you start in school classes. It's unacceptable.
You know, I watched that videotape, Shanta, and I also then watched an interview by some parents saying that this may be your position and you have a right to your position, but that you did not have a right to block those buses, and that parents should be the only ones making the decision about whether to send their schools back to school or not. Although we can tell from some of the photographs that there appeared to be, a fair number of parents who were actually out at those bus terminals who were protesting with you. But what do you say to those parents who say, it's not your choice, it's our choice?
It's not their choice. It's everybody's choice. This is a social disease. This is a social issue. This isn't an issue of individual prerogative. This isn't an issue of who it is, who's a parent, because everyone is vulnerable. And so long as everyone is vulnerable, everyone should be wearing a mask. No child should be in school. No teacher should be in school. No school staff should be in schools, especially because there's been no pre-testing that is taking place. We know that children are asymptomatic. So we know that if Detroit Public Schools was trying to bring in 2,000 students into in-class learning situations, they cannot tell us that some of those students are not infected with the virus. They are. They may not know that they are, but they are. And that affects everybody. This isn't a personal parental choice decision. Just like wearing a mask should be mandatory. It shouldn't be, oh, I don't want to wear one and it's my right to do that. It's ridiculous. This is a social problem that threatens our whole society. And we know now that the people who pushed for things like herd immunity were wrong. You can re-get the virus after you've had it. So this idea that opening up society will give us a new generation of people who won't be susceptible to the virus is just not true. I think in Detroit, it's like watching a genocide taking place, because the governor of Michigan has issued an order saying that schools should not be open. She is saying that she's studying what to do with schools all through the state of Michigan. But for some reason, it's okay for Detroit schools to open. No, Governor Whitmer, this is a crime. And between her and the school board and Vidi, our school superintendent, they know that they are risking the lives. And I can say this with great confidence, costing the lives of some people by this ridiculous decision that is insane. That's all I can say.
Sorry, I want to have Becky jump in here, because Becky, you see this at the national level. You represent 3 million educators across this country. And what Shanta has just described is the frustration that parents are feeling. We are caught in between these policy debates between the president at the national level, Secretary DeVos at the national level, governors of some states, whether it's a Democratic governor like Whitmer in Michigan, or it's DeSantis in Florida, Newsom in California. Then you have the local elected officials, you have school board members. So here we are, parents, in the midst of all of this fighting and infighting, trying to make a decision about which experts, we should follow, what part of the CDC guidelines. If the president doesn't like the CDC guidelines, he'll say things like, don't let the guidelines prevent you from going back to school, change the guidelines, do away with the guidelines, scrub the website. So, this is a lot for parents to try to digest. So I just want to ask you, Becky, I've got to get out of this segment, but is the be all and end all in this going to be the vaccines? Should parents just say, until there's a vaccine, we are not sending our kids back to school?
And here's the thing, the lack of leadership at the federal level in this country is unacceptable. It is unacceptable. What you just described, the fact that we have parents who are worried and can't look to leaders who have been elected to do what's right for all of us. They're callously telling experts, healthcare experts, that our schools can reopen safely, and they are not doing anything to try to guarantee that. That they're trying to move away from the CDC guidelines and force our students, our parents, our educators, all of them into this false choice. It is unacceptable. And so what I say to parents is, we have lots of information out there. I urge your listeners to go to NEA.org/COVID action. Not only will you get a lot of information, so you get accurate information from healthcare professionals, but also you will have that opportunity to take action. I need everyone, every single parent, and anyone who likes them or loves them or intends to keep living with them to write their member of Congress and their senators today. They need to pass the HEROES Act. They need to do it now, and they need to stop using our students as a pawn in a political game. This is unacceptable. These are our babies. Our babies. They are depending on us to be worthy of them. And at this moment, the leadership in this country is not doing that. And it's not okay that our parents are in this quandary about what to do with their students. They need to keep them safe until and unless elected politicians provide assurances that our students will have what they need, and the men and women who have dedicated their lives to educating America's students are safe as well.
Well,
Can I just
want to have Angela. Angela, I got literally 20
I'm sorry,
seconds.
can I jump in just for a second?
I'm sorry, Shanta, I got to run, but I just want to give Angela, she lost a friend, she lost a coworker.
I totally
20
understand.
seconds, Angela, any words that you would give to parents? You lived through this, you had COVID, you're recovering. I just want to give you 20 seconds just to the parents.
Yeah, thank you. My main thing that I want to tell parents is we can recover your child's education with hard work. Teachers are there, but you cannot recover a life that you are going to lose by putting your child into that petri dish is what it is. You're going to take that and they're going to go home, and who knows who will give from there. So just remember, you can recover their education. Teachers are dedicated enough to do that, but we will not be able to recover a death.
I'm sorry, Shanta, you got about 20 seconds if you can
Thank
make it
you.
quick.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of things. First, yes, I agree. They shouldn't go back until there's a vaccine. Second, my organization, which you can read about and join at BAMN.com, BAMN.com, filed a lawsuit today to try to get an injunction to end the reopening of the Detroit public schools. It's not. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, so much. We've got to end this debate. Obviously, so much more to be said about this topic. It does impact everyone. I love what you said, Becky. Whether you have a kid in school or not, this is an issue that impacts all of us. Thanks to all of you for lifting your voice on this important issue. We'll continue to follow this. We'll make sure that we list resources on our website so that people can find your BAM organization, they can find the National Education Association, and they can follow the work that you're doing. And definitely, we all have to lift our voices on this, and we need that piece of legislation, the HEROES Act, passed yesterday. In total agreement with you on that, Becky. Thank you, ladies, again for joining us. Wow,
Thank you.
this is a big topic, and we've heard from the experts, and now I get to bring on one of the parents who's been on the show at the early stages when we were talking about distance learning. She is an Emmy-nominated comedian and actress. She's the co-host of the new podcast, Two Funny Mamas, and she's the mother of a fourth grader who says schools are not safe. She lives in Los Angeles. Please welcome to the show, Kim Woodley. Kim, when I last talked with you, Joshua had just been, like most kids in LA Unified, had just been notified, or and he had been notified that he was going to be distance learning. And at that time, you were trying to figure out what did that mean for you, a busy mom who was, juggling work and juggling homeschooling. So tell us, what was, it like those first 2 or 3 months where you were actually his homeschool teacher?
I don't even like that word, distance learning. When I hear it, I start shaking. That distance learning means you're at home homeschooling your child, which I have never wanted to do. And I see why. It is very difficult when we were talking about it, I hadn't reached my breaking point. But it came to a head one night. Joshua he just didn't want to do the work. He was tired of doing the work. I was tired of teaching him, but it had to be about 10, 11 o'clock at night. I was trying to get him to write 3 sentences. That's it, just 3. And we literally were looking at each other eye to eye, like, you are going to write this sentence. And I got so upset, but I held it in. I was so angry, and I was like, just go to bed. But the next day, I still had that tension, and I started having chest pains. Wow. And once you start having chest pains, you can't just say, okay, just calm down, because I had slept through the night, but I had stressed out so much. And I had to go over to the doctor and get an EKG and everything. They said everything was fine, but I had to just let it go. The doctor was like, so what? If he doesn't learn his multiplications, he doesn't learn it. Right. He can't, if his mama's gone, now we got a bigger problem. So I had to email the teachers, and I said, look, if I don't get the work in, I got a cursed package still I'm trying to send to the teacher, and school's been out. But I said to them that I cannot, if I don't turn the work in. I'm in school too. You're constantly saying, where's this, where's that? But I have to work also. So the fact that they're going to go back to this in the fall is like twofold for me, because how do you work? Make sure your child is learning, and, make sure he's learning properly. It is I don't know how we can do this, but you want your child to be safe. I can't put them in school. You don't want to put them in school. And the school was shocked also, I'll be honest with you. We had a meeting, and the principal was giving us all the parents were on the Zoom, and they were giving us the guidelines to open up. And I was like, okay, that sounds, 3 days a week and half a class, and they're going to eat in the classroom, that everything. And then 2 days later, they emailed us and said, well, that's not going to happen. We're going to start with distance learning. And the first thing, all the parents are like, how do I work? How can I do that? I got 3 kids. I got 5 kids. I got 1 kid. And I don't know how this is going to work.
Let me ask you this, Kim. Would you have felt it was safe, the plan that you just said they outlined for you, where they would have had kids at alternate days, they would have, kept them in the classrooms? With that plan, would you have felt comfortable sending Joshua into a classroom, knowing that COVID-19 is spiking like crazy in California? We're with Texas, we're with Florida, we're with those southern and western states where the numbers, we're setting record numbers of cases almost every day.
I was okay with the plan because our numbers were going down I was like, oh, this is great. Had we stayed on the course that we were on, with everyone staying in, with the mask and everything, and bringing that curve down. Had we brought the curve down and had a steady down, yes, I would have felt safe. Now that it's spiked, of course, no, it's not. But also, I was going to put Joshua in saran wrap and send him to school. I was going to just bubble wrap him up, put some holes for his eyes, and send him on and let him breathe out a little thing.
So Kim, I know you're being, you're making a joke about that, but the point is you were going to try to make him as safe as possible. But you raised such a good point about the reality of this, is that working parents are having to juggle work and, monitoring, their kids learning at home. And it's almost impossible, particularly for single parents. And I know you had a pretty elaborate schedule. When we checked in with you in March, you had a board set up, you had looked like you had things under control, although we're hearing now that it was far from under control. But I wonder about you. You do have resources that a lot of poor parents don't have, and we're hearing about these parents who are renting out spaces and getting 2 or 3 kids together, and they're putting teachers with the kids. Have you thought about a creative way that you're going to make distance learning work more effectively this time around than what happened last school semester?
Yes, I'm thinking about reaching out to maybe some of the parents. But like you said, we don't know. They could be asymptomatic too. Some of my girlfriends have called to say maybe we can all, you still run into the same situation, but maybe we could put 2, 3 kids together. I've already started to set up his playroom, he has a large TV instead of him sitting at a small computer and his eyes being bad. But if I put the teacher on a larger screen and cast the classroom on there, maybe he'll feel more engaged because it's a bigger screen and he can see his friends, they can see him. That's one way. But some people have asked, maybe we could do a neighborhood thing with kids in the neighborhood. I've reached out to a couple people that I know have a retired teacher. She taught him during the end of the year. She would get on his iPad and FaceTime while he was learning, and she helped me when I had to work.
I think we have some video of that, of your teacher actually engaging with Joshua. Can we play that video?
If you remember what I'm telling you, even though it might take you a little bit longer because you didn't remember it by heart, you still know how to get the right answer.
So that teacher
because
helping him through with some of his lessons.
Yes.
So if you wrote 9 times 9.
And again, you are really fortunate, Kim. Again, you have access to teachers. I worry about, poor communities. You've done a lot of work in Compton and some other South LA communities. You've done a lot of work, you and I together, through Special Needs Network. What do you say to those parents who, they're not only juggling a job, some of them don't even have technology. They don't even have access to a computer, definitely don't have access to a teacher.
My fear is that the kids will fall behind. The kids will suffer. They're going to suffer, emotionally. They're going to, I don't know if there's a word for their learning, they will be behind other children. I don't know what to say or even how to fix that, how parents can work and have 3 kids of 3 different ages. I think we have to take a breath. You take the work and you do what you can. If our children know the basics and strengthen them in reading, math, teach them how to cook, teach them, different things, how to make things. YouTube University will teach them a lot of things. If you keep, well, I tell you, they will teach these kids how to play the piano. I think that the classroom, if your child is not engaged in that classroom, you have to ask for help. We got to figure out a way not to let these children fall behind. It might have to be a kind of drive-in situation. Like we might need to start turning some of these huge parking lots into classrooms and rotate. You know, it might be a thing where, or like you said, we put tents up and we put chairs out there, and all the kids got to come sit, 6 feet apart, whatever it is. But they might need to have some kind of instruction and to give these parents a mental break. That's the scary part, especially if they're single parents with little children like mine at 9 years old. That's little.
Kim, a lot of people don't know that before you were a famous actress and comedian, you were a public school teacher, that you actually taught school in Compton, California. You taught at a public school. I just wanted to get your reaction to what some parents who feel like school should reopen in full classrooms this fall, want to see kids back in those classrooms. They've taken to social media to say things like teachers are essential workers, and that teachers need to do what doctors and nurses are doing, which is get their butts in those classrooms and start teaching. How do you respond when you hear, parents saying that?
Well, I mean, I understand where the parent is coming from, but that's not the problem. The teacher is not the problem. It's the large gathering of children, parent, that maybe you are asymptomatic and your children are, and you bring them to school, and now they've affected the whole school. So is it really about the teacher? Yes, they're essential workers. I believe it is necessary. Teachers are necessary. But you got to also remember, teachers have their own families. We forget teachers are not just robots. Teachers have husbands and wives and children that they also have to teach. They have to do the same thing we're doing, and that's where the problem is. Now, if we went and got a bunch of monks or some priests and was like, hey, all right, we don't need y'all to teach this class, they don't have children, then maybe, but they also have to take care of their children. Or go get a bunch of retired teachers and say, hey, can you come back? But you still can't put the children in the classroom. That is the problem.
Yeah. So what do you think, Kim? One last question before I let you go. What if you could wave a magic wand? The Trump administration has done such an abysmal job. The national leadership on this, schools still don't have from the CDC the guidelines that they're supposed to adhere to. It's become a political pond where southern states that have Republican governors are saying kids just go back to school, open these doors. Trump and his administration is, I want all kids in schools. And we've seen big, districts, LA Unified, San Diego Unified, saying kids will not go back to school. And I feel like in the midst of all of this, the kids are just being, used as a political pawn, and nobody's really focused on what's in the best interest of our kids. So if you could wave a magic wand, what would your solution to this be?
Wow. First of all, my solution would be to get Trump out of, first I'm gonna hit the magic wand and Obama would be back in office. His pandemic team would be back, and we would go back in time before this happened. I would make a magic wand, and therefore we would have something where the children would not, the problem is, touch their face, etc. I want children back in school. I want them, but it's dangerous. A magic wand would make the curve go down, and then we could stop. A magic wand would give us a vaccine that now we can operate with the herd method. If so many people get, vaccinated, now the rest of us are protected. Yeah. That would be my solution and the other magic wand would be let each individual school district decide how they want to move forward the safest possible way. And let the parents have a choice. If the parents don't want their kids in school, offer them distant learning, and offer them also that they don't have to put them in school. You don't get penalized if you don't put your child in school. There should be a choice. Here's our distant learning package. Here is Susan. She's going to be teaching on distant learning. We're going to have the kids that want to go to school. These are the guidelines, and let each district make their own decision.
Well, there are a lot of people that agree exactly like you, Kim, that this is a district matter and it needs to be decided at the local level, because what's happening locally looks very different if you're in New York versus if you're in Los Angeles.
Yes.
But thank you again for sharing your insights with us, both as a parent, as a busy parent, as a single parent, and as a former school teacher. I always love to check in with you and appreciate your voice on these matters. Take care and tell Joshua we hope he has a phenomenal school year.
We'll see. We get through these multiplications. And I just wanted to mention real quick that what else has been getting me through is me and Sherry Shepherd have a podcast on YouTube and iTunes called Two Funny Mamas. And that has been helping me get through this.
Wonderful. We're going to post about that that podcast, because we all need laughter. One of the things that can get us through this is good music, laughter, and lots of virtual hugs. And I give you a virtual hug this morning. And thank you for sitting down with me.
Thank you.
Care,
you look beautiful.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Always great to talk to my good friend, Kim Whitley. I can always count on her for not just a big fat hug, but also a lot of laughter. And we do wish her son and all the kids who are either going back to a classroom or virtual learning, we wish them a really phenomenal school year. We've been talking a lot this morning, mostly about the decisions that K through 12 parents have to make. But parents of college students also have some pretty big decisions to make, as colleges across this country are deciding if they will welcome students back on campus. My next guest says that decision is being driven in some cases by lucrative college sports programs. Jim Watson, he's a 7-time Emmy winner. He's a sportscaster and host covering Olympic women's volleyball, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and professional football. Good morning, Jim, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Ariva. Thanks for having me.
Wow. So, Jim, there's this big debate going on about these K through 12 kids, what's going to happen with them. And I happen to be a parent that is dealing with that issue, but I also have college age kids. And when I look at colleges, they seem to be as all over the map as these public school districts are. Tell us what's going on with colleges and what's driving the decisions by some of these schools to insist that kids come back to campuses.
Ariva, I'm just like you. I'm a parent. I have 2 young children. And I heard your interview with Kim and her concerns. I have the same ones. That's the biggest topic in my household. When I first had kids, my friends, my brothers, they all told me, you'll never stop being a parent. So the same concerns I have for my first grader and my preschooler, I imagine college age parents go through the same thing. And let's understand what college athletics is all about. It's all about money. There's a legendary quote by a guy named Don Ohlmeyer, who was the grand poobah of NBC Sports back in the day. He's a legend in my business. And he said, the answer to all of your questions is money. Now, money's not always evil, and money allows power and freedom and choices. And so in college athletics, we all admit that it's about money. College athletics generates $10 billion annually. Now, if you just look at football and then you go to the Power 5 conferences, which are the big schools, the 65 traditional football powers, that's $4.1 billion. That boils down to $78 million per school per year. So they're not obviously going to give up that money quickly. But what are we talking about here? What's the why? Why are we doing it now? Schools are already talking about pushing sports back now into the springtime. Universities are going online. USC just announced a couple of weeks ago, quickly they said, we're going online. And that was it. There was no discussion. There was no debate. And I think a lot of schools are going to start following that. We can't control the situation. And some schools have already had football practice back on campus. Most schools have involuntary practices in July. Ohio State had a flare up. North Carolina, Houston, Kansas State, to the point where they actually had to shut it down. But then the University of Oklahoma last week had 98 kids tested and came back with 98 negatives. But it speaks to how nebulous this whole thing is. We know how contagious it is. It's just unpredictable. So the question I always come back to is why? Why now? Why force it Why don't we just buy more time? And maybe in the springtime, things will look a lot better.
You know, there have been some interesting headlines. USA Today, Jim, had a headline saying, you know, our college is basically using kids as guinea pigs as they're trying to figure out what the protocol should be for COVID-19. And you mentioned some of those sports programs that tried to have kids back for practice. We saw LSU, we saw Clemson, we saw Kansas, all of them trying to get kids back for these tryouts or early practices, and outbreaks happening even as they try to bring kids back early. So how, again, are parents making this decision? Now, the athletes, I think maybe they have a different, question that they're dealing with, because a lot of those kids are on scholarship. So they're not having to shelve out, the 50, the 75, $80,000. But for those kids who's, not getting those football or, those athletic scholarships, and parents have to, decide, do I want to pay $60,000 for a kid to go to a dorm? The professor's going to be on Zoom. A lot of these schools are saying kids come back, but professors, you get to teach the class on Zoom. How are parents to decide, if that's is that a good investment of their money? And is that going to be a good learning environment for these college students?
We've seen tuition skyrocket, right? And so now the experience is different. You're not getting the same bang for your buck. And so if I'm a parent and I'm already thinking about college, I already have my college accounts for my kids in place. I start thinking about that. There are a lot of parents in this country who can't afford to send their kids to college anymore. And now, everyone says you have to have a bachelor's to compete in the world. You have to save these kids from themselves right now. And that's the parent's job. Like when I was 18, I was bulletproof. I could do anything. I didn't worry about it. When I go out now, I happen to live by the beach. And when I go out, there's high school kids and college kids in huge groups on the beach. I could go up and sermonize to them and tell them what they're doing and that they're risking. They're not going to hear it. I wouldn't have heard it when I was 18 years old either. But when you come back onto campus, and let's start with athletics and then go into the broader campus population. Right now, these football players are living in a bubble because no one's on campus. But that's not sustainable, because in a month, 40,000 kids are coming back on campus. But it's not even like the bubble the NBA's in Orlando. Those are grown men, paid professionals making a choice, and it's contained. They're in a biosphere down there. This isn't going to happen on a college campus, because even if you keep them in the athletic dorms and have their own commissary and their own lounge areas, at some point they either have to go to class or they're going to go out into the community. And you can't marshal 100 kids. There's 100 guys on a roster, and then you have managers and assistant coaches and trainers and medical staff, and you have all the sports information directors and athletic directors. You have all these people around, and as you get away from the team, not only do you get more people, but you also get higher in age. And when you go into an athletic department, you're looking at guys that are 40, 50, 60 years old. They are the ones that are in trouble right now. So you have to go to the 18 and 19-year-olds. We have to be the parents. We have to be the town elders and think, what's the best thing? If you ask me the best thing, push it all to spring. Push it back. From day one of this pandemic, March 15th, 16th, when they shut down the world, what did they say? We've got to buy time. Why don't we buy time and let the geniuses in the lab coats do their work and save us? The CEO of Pfizer just said last week, banner headline, I'm amazed it's not the biggest story in the world right now. He said, we'll deliver an effective vaccine by the end of the year. NBC, this morning, NBC News said the University of Oxford has a new vaccine that's been effective, not only for antibodies, but for T cells, which attack the virus. Look, it's working. They're getting there. I remember seeing an interview with a virologist early in this whole thing where he said, this is not a complex virus. We can figure this out. We just need time to figure out the combination and unlock this whole thing. What is the point of rushing back right now when we can push it back to spring and we can recoup all of this? We can have a vaccine. People, the athletes and the students can have their health insured. You can get the money back. You can have the same experience. We can kind of go back to what we were, but it's never going to be the same.
So let me ask you this, Jim. I hear what you're saying about we should push all of these college athletic programs. They shouldn't start. They shouldn't be practicing, shouldn't be bringing hundreds of students together with these, more senior managers and coaches that are involved in these sports. Are you saying also for students returning to college, should all colleges do what the Cal States are doing, what USC is doing, and saying, hey, kids, don't flood, the airports, don't fly back into these colleges, stay home for the first semester, do online learning, and then we'll have you back on campus in the spring?
Riva, I'm a sportscaster, so by nature, I'm just not a very intelligent guy. I yell into a stick for a living about games. I tell you what you're already looking at. So I'm not going to make that call because I think it's different for everybody. And there's flare-ups. There's places where the numbers are very low and other places where the numbers are huge. The University of Texas made a statement last week. They said they're going to come back on campus, but if one student, and it's one of the biggest universities in the country, I believe it's the 7th largest. If one student contracts coronavirus and dies from it, they're shutting down the entire university. So, that's a sobering statement for them to even have to put that out there. So I'm not going to tell universities what to do. If you ask me as a parent, I think I'd be real careful about sending my kids back. I live 2 blocks from an elementary school. I want my kids to go back to school like every other parent in the country, but I don't blame the teachers for what they're doing. We don't really know that much about this. We know a lot more than we did on March 15th, but we're still learning every single day. And again, why force it? So, people love to wear these t-shirts with declarations now. So if I could wear a t-shirt, I would say, if you don't know, don't go.
I like that, Jim. If you don't know, don't go. And I like your other phrase, buy time.
Yeah.
We're going to leave it right there. But thank you so much, Jim, for sitting down with me and sharing your expertise. And I just, these are such difficult decisions. And as parents of elementary school, high school, college age, no matter what parent you are, these are all decisions we're having to make. And the decision-making time is now. It seemed like back in March, we had a lot of time, but that decision-making time is now. So thank you, Jim, for your insight and for joining us today. Wow, these are big decisions, and I've been saying throughout this program that I'm a parent, and I keep saying that because I do empathize with all of the difficulty that, parents are facing right now. And we're hearing so many different voices, which is why I'm so grateful to the panel of experts we had on today, because they are giving us that kind of information that we need to make those tough decisions. Big shout out to my production team and to our sponsor. You can continue this conversation by following me at Ariva Martin. This is a conversation that we will continue to have because, there's nothing more important than our babies, our students, and we keep, pushing that message forward. A couple of words before I get out of here today. It's been like crazy in the last 3 years. This country has been divided over just about everything from Confederate statues to healthcare insurance. But I think finally in this country, we agree on something. And I think we all agree that kids need to be in school. We agree that middle class and working parents can't work if kids aren't going to school. We agree that 30 million children rely on schools for hot meals. We even agree that some homes are not safe and that school is the only reprieve for domestic and child abuse. We also agree, and we've heard this statistic over and over again, that 18% of students don't have high-speed internet, at home where they can even access distance learning. And finally, and this is for all my special needs parents, we agree that for kids like Marty and our special needs kids, not going into a classroom means that they are not learning in most cases, and it also means that they are regressing. But guys, this is where the agreement ends, where I vehemently disagree, and you heard my experts too. We disagree with the president in demanding that all kids go back into classrooms, and that states like California and Texas and Arizona, that they open those classrooms where COVID-19 cases are, spiking. We disagree that anything about that can be safe. We disagree that students should even be asked to enter classrooms without the financial resources that schools need to buy PPE, to ensure social distancing, and to do those things that the CDC has said from the beginning will make students and the staff in schools safe. Our kids are not pawns. They're not guinea pigs. They're not experiments. And we won't let this administration or any craven school district put their politics, their optics, or their budgets over the safety of our kids, our beloved teachers, and our staff. Parents, we have to keep rejecting this false narrative being presented to us that it's either home, school, or unsafe classrooms. We have to keep demanding, like Becky Pringle said, that this president, that governors and school districts put the best interest of our kids first, that they do their damn jobs, that they get schools the funds that they need to have everything that students and staff will need to go into a safe environment. Parents, let's make sure that the president, the senators, our representatives in Congress, that they hear us and that this message is loud and clear. Fund our schools, follow the science, and get our kids back in those classrooms. Thanks, y'all. Be safe out there, and I will see you on Wednesday.